It's been about 2 weeks since my last taping session, and I've been busy learning all sorts of wonderful things. A lot of frustration, a lot of conversations, particularly with my artist friends, on how to approach this. And rather than go through all the various conversations, I just thought I'd get to the chase. The first big thing is that you can use a pencil and draw on paper or draw on canvas or draw on wood and then paint over with acrylic. In fact, many artists use this technique when laying out a painting. They'll actually rough sketch on the canvas with a pencil just to give some form and to have the perspectives placed on the canvas and then paint over it. The key is that the paint that you paint over it must be solid and not allow the pencil to come through. So there's no issue there. So that gives us the opportunity to take a pencil and draw the scrolls on the wooden model. And if we don't like it, take a rubber and you rub it off and you keep going until you get the scrolls laid out perfectly exactly where you want them, with no risk and no headache to reverse any mistake we make. The second thing is using my 000 paintbrush. I did literally hundreds of paintings with it, and it's a wonderful paintbrush. But I have difficulty getting nice clean lines on a consistent basis. So I needed something else that was a little more controllable. And that led me to the old dip pens. And I'm using a very fine nib. I went through a series of nibs, but I'm using a very fine nib because if I make a mistake, the mistake is small, and when I thicken the line afterwards, I can easily overcome this. The new problem then becomes, can you use paint straight out of a tube and apply a dip pen? And the clear answer is no. And so that took me to it's not here, but anyway, it's the equivalent of this. Acrylic inks. And acrylic inks flow quite well, but they are a little transparent. So what I developed was mixing the acrylic ink with a bit of the acrylic paint out of the tube until I found that magic medium that the paint was thick enough that it would cover over the line, but thin enough that it would move and allow me to use the dip pen. So that's where we've been. As I said, practicing with a pencil to draw these scrolls. The more that you use it, the more that I get better at it. And I'm now quite good at making nice clean lines. And what I will do on the boat is to draw all the scroll lines on the Prussian blue, and then come with the dip pen afterwards and cover it over. So just to take you through the practice sessions that I did, I'll just start here. And so I would do something like this, following this design. And literally I've done not quite thousands, but certainly hundreds of these. And the more you do, the more comfortable you become, and the cleaner the lines become. And you simply get quite good at it. Now to show you the process, next stage, shaking the acrylic ink. I'm just going to drop some of it here, just to go through the process. And now I'll go over that using the pen. So this is what we did, and you can see there's some bits and pieces that need to clean up, but most of the pencil lines have gone, and we're seeing nice, good scroll, beautiful lines. And if you look at these, they're really as good as what David shows you in the book. So the second thing we're going to do now is show you that this is very clean, very thin. If I wanted to thicken it up a little bit, which is what I want to do, I put a little bit of paint, and now I'm going to put some more of the acrylic ink. And you can use anything you want. I'm going to use the pen, and you're going to see I'm going to start to dissolve the two into one until I think I have a nice blend that is thin enough that it'll work with the pen, but thick enough that it can give me a little more better lines. And we clean that off and start again. And you see now the line is getting a little thicker and a little deeper. And you may have to go back a little more often to load up on ink. So you can see all the pencil lines have now disappeared, and we've cleaned up some of the lines, and I'm really extremely happy with that. Now remember, this is from a fellow who can't draw a straight line with a ruler. So practice certainly has helped. And then you'll see there's a little error here. So what I'm going to do is come back with the 000 paintbrush and put some Prussian blue on it and clean that off. And so the first coat, which is really what we wanted to do with the yellow ochre, is now complete. So the next stage would be to transfer this to the model itself. And I just thought I'd show you, it's not just on paper. Clearly, my skill on paper has really gotten very, very good. But on wood, and I have this template that I have drawn. So I'm just doing this to show you it's not as easy on wood as it is on paper. It's much less forgiving. And that's because the wood has grain in it. And again, it comes back to the preparation and sanding. And the more you can prepare that surface, the better. So you can see been cleaning up, and the lines got a little fat, but not totally out of fat, because we can clean up the line with some blue on the outside. When it dries, we'll fill in those spots that the nib is hard, so it might leave a space that's not covered. And then remember, we're going to come back on the top side of it and add dashes of very light ochre, almost white. And on the back side, to give it some depth, we're going to use some burnt sienna. And even this is too dark, so we need to whiten it a little bit, lighten it a little bit, because what happens against the blue background, which you're seeing here, it almost disappears totally. So we're lightening it a little bit so it'll get more this shade than this shade. So again, having learned the technique on paper, it's important you come and make a test piece on wood, preferably the same thing, prepared exactly the same way. And then you can see, you can get some beautiful scrolls, again, done with this dip pen, and then improved over time and made a bit thicker as you go along. For those of you who feel a little intimidated of painting directly onto the model, David suggests you can actually paint it on acid-free paper. And the method he describes is in the book, but in simple terms is you wet the paper, then let it dry and put it on a board, but tape the edges of the board so that when the paper dries out, it'll shrink and tighten up. And what that does is when you go to stick the paper onto the model, where you have to apply some glue, you won't get any shrinkage. I'm not doing that. I'm painting directly onto the model as was done on the rail ship. Now comes the difficult task of putting the scrolls onto the model itself. And the first thing you may have noticed is that when I was drawing, my hand was supported on a flat surface, and that's key to drawing nice flat lines. So clearly when we come on the model now, that's not an issue. So what I devised was this little system of putting a flat surface to help me steady my hand. And again, you need to protect the paint, so a little rubber washers on the side, and then we apply the scrolls. And again, some advice from a lifelong friend, Peter Shim, who is a fantastic artist and who does the most incredible detail work. It's not so much the paintbrush, he says, it's the eyes. So again, glasses, magnifiers, and that helps me get to see what I'm doing properly. The first thing that we need to do is to make sure we have a nice sturdy rest for the boat. And again, I have this sub-platform that I've rigged up, which sits on the drawers of my workbench. And then I clamp it into the Lee Valley vise, which is really a nice bonus. I didn't know I had designed something with such creativity in mind. And the next thing I do to help me with the scrolls is I have the sheets of the various patterns that I've drawn, because you want to mix it as much as you can. So I just use this as a guide. I can look up and say, well, I've had enough of these, so I'll try one of these or one of these, just to make it more interesting. The sequence of installation is very important in this or any other model. You remember in my last video I was busy making all sorts of moldings, and we were going to install the moldings, and then suddenly I found there was an issue that I had to do the painting first, and the reason for that is really very simple. If you had these moldings on the model and you had to paint, it would be very difficult to even draw the scrolls inside these spaces with the moldings in place. In addition to which, if you'd have to mask out inside the molding, again becomes very, very difficult. So that there's no question, you need to paint all the scrolls first, leaving a very thin strip so that you can stick the wooden molding onto the wooden boat, because it won't stick well on acrylic. It will stick, but not perfectly. Here's the drift rail molding, and it's quite thin, so it's not as critical with the drift rail molding as with the shear rail molding. But you can see this is quite a bit fatter, and so we need to keep the scrolls more in the center of the piece. So for instance here, I've probably gone too close to the line, and I'm going to lose a little bit of the bottom of that scroll. Again, I don't think that's critical, but you know, we could have done this perfectly by just pulling it up more to the center. Now we are cleaning up the scrolls, and again this is the 000 brush. We have a mixture of acrylic from the tube and ink, and we're just coming back and really cleaning up whichever lines we can. Again, being very careful. I was having trouble finding a way to rest my hand to be able to draw and then paint these. So I'm going to leave them out for now, and I'm going to have to take the model off the building board and find a way that I can rest my hand to do these accurately. In the meantime, I'll just go back to the rest of the scrolls. Well, we're almost done. We're now going to put a little highlight to the top side of the scrolls, just little spots, maybe where the turns are, and what that does is it gives it a little bit of a three-dimensional look. So the first thing we'll do is try a little mix. So that's the white. And here is the ochre. And we'll just mix them in. It should stay more white than yellow. So I think that's about it. Another skill learned, I would like to say even perfected, certainly from when I started doing this exercise to my skill level now, is just day and night. And again, the key is practice, practice, practice until the pencil was comfortable in my hand and I could go around it. There's no question that if I have to choose very fine work from using a 000 paintbrush or the pen that the pen has provided me with far more control. I get straighter, cleaner lines. It's just loading up with the ink on the pen becomes a bit more hectic, and you certainly you can't use the acrylic ink without thickening it up a little bit. The problem is if you thick it up too much, of course, it doesn't spread. So another one under my belt. I still have a little bit of touching up to do on the bow, and then we'd switch over to the other side, completely paint the other side, and then install all the moldings. So we see you in the next video, and remember, keep modeling.